Welcome everybody to our June 11th, 2020 version of the District 57 Power Hour.
Power Hour!
Precisely, sir. And tonight we're excited to share the Successful Club module, Evaluate to Motivate. To me, the most perfect module in the whole Successful Club series. Your Power Hours presenters are
Brendan James Murphy, DTM. Brendan has been to the finals of the evaluation contest more than any other mortal man. He's gone as far as second place, 7 times. 7 times he's been up there. Oh my goodness. Almost won. What a great guy.
And the reason he said it is because he is Dennis Dawson, double DTM, not once but twice a DTM. And he has competed in the evaluation contest and actually won. And he never lets me forget it. But just let you know that we're both excited about the power of evaluation. So tonight, we're going to give this module from the Successful Club series, which is Toastmasters' way of helping clubs have quality meetings and a quality organization, which helps everybody grow and fulfill the wonderful mission of a Toastmasters club. And tonight it is Evaluate to Motivate.
To motivate!
The title says it all. You have to give feedback in such a way as to motivate. Dennis, you ready to go?
I am so ready that the mice have to bend over.
Fantastic. Glad to hear you're extremely motivated, sir. So evaluations benefit speakers by providing immediate feedback. Dennis, why is immediate feedback important?
Used to be that management style would be to give you a annual review, maybe a 6-month review if you were lucky, and they would wait all that time and gather up all the terrible things you had done over the course of the year. Then they would put it in a big bag and dump it over your head. That was your annual review, and it was a pretty painful experience. Now, in the 80s, they had the book, The 1-Minute Manager. And the idea behind that was that you would give immediate feedback to an employee if they had done something well or if they needed an immediate correction. But you would go to that person, you would have a 1-minute conversation, either praise or a concern, and give the feedback so that your employee was constantly being given the guidance they needed. That constant feedback is so very valuable. That's something that is a hallmark of the Toastmasters program. Evaluation is the heart of what we do. It's central to what we do, and it's how we show that we care. And that continual feedback over a course of many months gives you those course corrections you need to become the best speaker you can possibly be.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dennis. And I want to point out the need for feedback. It's a human need for feedback, that people long for it. They desire feedback, even if it's not necessarily positive feedback. They're always interested in receiving some kind of information on what they've done or how they've acted or how they've behaved. So whether it's at work or in Toastmasters, we all need feedback, and the immediate feedback is something that you can tie directly to what you just did and learn from it quickly. So this module isn't so much about being a better speaker. It's about helping others become better speakers, but it also helps you become a better leader by evaluating people in a motivational way, giving them that feedback they thirst for, and helping them to grow. Once again, inside Toastmasters, outside Toastmasters, you'll be a better leader when you evaluate to motivate. So speakers are also benefited by offering methods for improvement. Goodness.
Well, if you're going to give somebody feedback, it's not like you're going to sit there and say, I didn't like your voice, I didn't like your gestures. You want to give them some idea of what it is you would prefer to see. It's always something that you say, of course, in terms of what works for me, what I've seen other people do, as opposed to what you should do.
Nice. And then the key thing about an evaluation, it's not a critique, it's an evaluation, and it's done in such a way as to build and maintain self-esteem. Build and maintain self-esteem is the heart of what we're doing here, and which makes us different, and which will make you a better leader, as well as a better evaluator. Dennis, why is self-esteem important?
The whole purpose of Toastmasters is to come together in a safe environment to practice things, which means at times you're going to fail. If you're going to fail in safety, then you have to do it in such a way that it's not going to have a permanent impression on your self-worth. So yes, we're always concerned with making sure that people feel good about what they've done, even as we're giving them the feedback that will help them be better the next time.
Absolutely. And so we evaluate in Toastmasters by the tell and sell approach. When the evaluator talks and the speaker listens. This makes the evaluation time efficient. It's not a conversation. It's not a back and forth. The speaker just listens, just like Dennis is right now. He's listening. He's not speaking. In that same way, we want to be efficient in the evaluation and let the speaker just absorb what the evaluator is sharing. So how to evaluate effectively? The method starts before the speech. And we encourage you to talk with the speaker about project objectives. What kind of project objectives have you encountered before, Dennis?
Every lesson has got project objectives, and you need those objectives so that you can learn from the curriculum. At first, it's just getting up and speaking, and that's really all you're concerned with. But as you progress, you're going to work on your vocal variety, you're going to work on gestures, you're going to work on giving persuasive speeches. So you can get up there and give a great speech with wonderful vocal variety and wonderful gestures, but if the point was that you were going to persuade people and all you do is tell a funny story, you haven't really met the project objectives. And if you don't meet the project objectives, you're not really working the Toastmasters program.
Gotcha. So as an evaluator, you've got clarity on what those objectives are, and you also want to talk with the speaker about the evaluation guidelines. Toastmasters is very good about giving you, the evaluator, some things to look for. And you just want to be clear with the speaker what's going on and what you expect to judge or evaluate the speaker on. And then finally, any concerns the speaker may have. And Dennis, do you ever have any concerns about being a speaker?
Well, very often when I give a lesson speech, I'm trying to follow the lesson from Toastmasters, but I'm probably preparing that speech for something outside of Toastmasters, maybe for something at work. So I'll be sure that I follow the guidelines for the lesson, but I might ask the people, hey, would you pay attention to whether or not I'm making a logical argument for a layman so that they can understand it? Because I'll be giving this at the office for people who aren't in my department. Things along that line you can always tack on as additional things the evaluator can help you with.
Nice. So when you're evaluating, you have to be aware that during the speech, it's all part of the process as well. Show that you are interested in the evaluator. Why is this important, Dennis?
Oh.
Precisely.
Oh.
If I'm a speaker and I'm looking around and people are listening to me, and then Dennis is over there yawning and looking at his phone and twiddling his thumbs, then when he gives me feedback, I'm not going to believe him. So if you're not interested in listening to the speech, the speaker won't be interested in listening to your evaluation. Now, and put yourself in the position of the speaker. Why is this important, Dennis?
Very often, someone will get up there and they're giving a speech that is from a very early lesson, something along that line. And I remember doing my icebreaker speech 13 years ago. I can't believe that this person gets up here and they aren't as completely smooth as I remember myself to be, as accurate as we all come to Toastmasters at our current level of expertise. We're going to have strengths in some areas and weaknesses in others that we can work on. So you want to always keep in mind that we're here for the same purpose, to improve our public speaking skills, no matter what level we are.
Absolutely. And do take notes. Dennis, do you take notes when you're an evaluator?
I always take notes because when you give feedback, it's not enough to say, "You were so funny. You use such clever phrases," and then not have any examples to point out. If you just give people blank praise like that, you're not really helping them by reinforcing the things that they've done best. So, Brendan, when you told that story about the time the flaming meteor fell out of the sky, hit you in the head, turned your hair red, I was with you all the way, man.
Thank you so much. And one thing I found in college as well as in Toastmasters, taking notes, the physical act of writing, even though my handwriting isn't very good, it helps me remember what happened and what was said. So do take notes. Make that part of your discipline as well. So now we get to the part when you're giving your evaluation. Got a couple of slides on that. The first one is choose your words carefully, especially when it comes to the pronouns. You want to use the first person pronoun, I. You don't want to use the second person pronoun, you, because you want to speak for yourself as opposed to pointing to the speaker and saying, "You, Dennis, messed up there. You, Dennis, didn't do this. You. No, say, I, like this. I didn't care for this. I would suggest this." Do you choose your words carefully, Dennis Dawson?
I do. I'm not just concerned with the second person singular. I'm also concerned with the first person plural. We couldn't understand what you were saying. We had trouble hearing you. We hate the way you comb your hair. We don't want you to be part of our club anymore. We are done with you. Now, you don't want to give that kind of feedback. You only want to speak for yourself. And when you speak for yourself, you want to speak kindly.
Nice. And please remember to evaluate the speech, not the person. This isn't easy because the speech is not just a collection of words, it's how the person brings the words to life. So you're not just looking at the words of the speech, you're looking at how the speaker brought those words to effective ways of transferring meaning. And you're looking at that combination, but once again, you can say, "You messed up here, you didn't do this," whatever. You have to be clear that how that was delivered wasn't as effective as it could have been, and you can offer ways to improve it. But you just can't say, "Oh, I like you, you're a wonderful person." That's not the speech either. So you have to look at the speech, those specific details, and how they do that. Dennis, how do you focus on the speech and not the person?
It's important to focus on the speech that they are giving today, not all of the speeches they've ever given or the speech that you saw them give last week. Very often people such as myself will get busy and we come in, we give a speech, it's not really up to our normal standard. And I'm actually disappointed to have an evaluator say to me, "Oh, well, you're always so good. I noticed a couple of things, but I'm just going to let them slide because I'm sure that there's a reason that you didn't do it as well as you could have this time." No, I want an evaluation.
Mhm.
This is one of the reasons you get your best evaluations from new members. New members don't know better, and they'll actually tell you the truth a lot of times.
Very good, very good. And we come back to promoting self-esteem. This positive result of your evaluation is so important. I'll go back to the idea of facing the fear of public speaking. It's a fear because we are social creatures and social condemnation is extremely hard to take. When you speak, you're really putting yourself out there and at risk of having people not like what you share. So the way you deliver the truth of the speech, the way you evaluate needs to promote self-esteem. Dennis, any other tips for promoting self-esteem as an evaluator?
One way to promote self-esteem is to refer back to a person's earlier speeches and point out how they have grown over time. That's different than what we were discussing just a moment ago, where you are evaluating the entire process versus the speech that they're giving at the moment. But you can say, I was really impressed with how few filler words you had. Remember, back when you gave your icebreaker, you said, 28 times, and look at how that's fallen away. I'm really proud of the progress that I've seen you make.
Now, as an evaluator, you get a chance to listen and do a semi-impromptu speech. And if you deliver excellent evaluation content, but don't deliver it in a way that promotes the self-esteem by not smiling or not watching your tone of voice, making sure that matches the positive message, that too can subvert this goal of promoting positive self-esteem. So it's not just your brilliant insights or your analysis, it's how you say the words and how you smile when you do that. And when you give an evaluation, as you conclude it, please make sure that you're connecting to your opening statement. And an opening statement starts off with, Mr. General Evaluator, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, honor guests, and especially you, Dennis Dawson. That's the polite introduction, and that's very nice to start that way. And then you say, hey, I enjoyed what happened here today when you instructed me, when you enlightened me. And at the end, you want to reinforce that positive opening statement. Dennis, how else can they connect to their opening statement?
Well, I cheat. Have you ever done those mazes that you see in like Highlights magazine, and they're really very simple? Well, if you start at the beginning and try and do it, you might take a wrong path. But if you start at the end and work backwards, you're always going to find your way back to the beginning. You can do the same thing with your evaluation. Begin by writing your conclusion, then write your introduction that's going to tie into that conclusion. Your conclusion should be the main point, the one thing you really want to sell to your person that you're evaluating that day. So that's how I do it.
Yes.
Start with the conclusion, end with the beginning.
And you can see why he actually won the evaluation contest. Now, I want you to summarize your key points when you give an evaluation, because communication, especially oral communication, needs to be repetitive and redundant. Allow me to repeat that. Oral communication needs to be repetitive and redundant to make its point get through. When people listen and you're speaking out loud, they can't go back and read what you just said. They have to hear it. And most likely, one thought will trigger them to go into their brain and not focus on what you're giving them in your evaluation. So at the end of the evaluation, you summarize in case they miss something along the way. Dennis, do you summarize?
I always summarize, and I'll tell you why. In a contest, it gains you 15 points if you have a summary of your main points in your conclusion. That means if you don't summarize your main points in a contest, you immediately become a B+, even if you do everything else exactly the way you should. So you don't want to be that B+ person. That means you take second place in the evaluation contest.
Yes, Dennis. So encourage applications of what was learned. And that can be part of your summary as well. It's like, hey, next time when you work with visual aids, you might want to get there a little earlier and run through those slides to make sure they all click at the appropriate time. It's very important to give that specific, those details of how they can grow and get better. You deliver that in a positive way. Des, how do you encourage applications of what was learned during your wonderful award-winning evaluations?
Well, one way to encourage application of what was learned, very often the subject of their speech doesn't fit the lesson as well as it could. And what you can suggest is the kind of speech that might be better for a humorous topic, or something that involves research, pointing out that they should have cited more sources. So the next speech they give, why don't you try doing some research, even though it's a humorous speech, and cite the sources in a humorous way. That way they can continue to develop the skill while still sticking to their curriculum.
Fantastic. One thing to remember in all of this is being true to yourself. Now, honest evaluations are upbeat and encouraging, yes, but they must offer suggestions for improvement. The thing you don't want to do when you evaluate to motivate is offer what is called a whitewash. And Dennis, I don't think you've ever given a whitewash, but have you ever been tempted to do so?
Actually, no, because I'm sort of a terrible person. I don't want to give a whitewash evaluation where I say, and I'm going to make people cringe, when the evaluation is, you really drew me in with your speech. The one thing I would say to you is use the stage more, okay? These criticisms are things that Toastmasters say to Toastmasters when they don't know what to say to Toastmasters. They're not really original thoughts about the speech that you're seeing today. It is absolutely essential that we give constructive feedback to people. If all you do is tell them how great they were and give them those platitudes, they become confident, they are happy to get up and speak, and they become terrible. It's a really sad thing when they go outside of Toastmasters, get up in front of a real audience that isn't quite as friendly, and they bomb terribly because no one has ever told them that they have certain bad habits that they really should have overcome before going out into the world.
And I just have to step back and say being genuine is something that's at the heart of Toastmasters. Back when I joined in 1997, one of the first speeches you had to do was called Speak with Sincerity. And it emphasized the fact that in Toastmasters, we're not acting. We're not acting and pretending we're Abraham Lincoln or any other great speaker. We are ourselves, and we have to be ourselves, and we have to speak our truth with sincerity when we give a speech, a table topic, and especially an evaluation. If you're trying to be nice and it's not really where you're at right there, be genuine, but do it in a way that is encouraging. And you can strike that balance when you learn how to evaluate to motivate, and that's what it's all about. We want you to be genuine. We want you to deliver the truths that you saw in the speech, and then do it in such a way that does promote positive self-esteem, and that's the key. So be genuine, be true, but also be encouraging. So we're lucky to have Dennis Dawson, evaluation contest champion, here today, and he has three major dictums, three major points that he wants to share with you. Dennis?
Yeah, you can share them all at once. The three dictums are what I heard, what I saw, what I felt. The nice thing about giving this feedback in an evaluation is no one can actually argue with you. If you say you weren't loud enough, well, that's completely subject to opinion. But if I say I had trouble hearing, no one can argue with you on that. It appeared to me that your gestures were a little over-rehearsed. If I would continue to rehearse until they become more fluid. That's the way I've always worked on my organic gestures. I felt that you were really genuine. I was with you the entire time. I went on that same emotional journey with you, and I thank you for taking me along with you. All of these things with the I, and only talking about what you saw, heard, and felt, not about some speech you saw someone else give at some point, or anything that's not directly related to the speech you saw on this day at this moment. Anything else that you introduce is going to take away from the effectiveness of your evaluation. So you talk about what you saw, heard, and felt in this particular speech on this particular day, and leave the other stuff for other conversations.
And I think for anybody who's starting evaluations, you cannot go wrong with this format. And you look at what you heard and say, I like this of what I heard, but I thought I heard this and I would do it differently. That type of balance. So we can look at both positive and things that could be changed of what you heard, saw, and felt. This is always a great way to do an evaluation, but I want to offer you my method for doing an evaluation. Is that everything else that we talked about, but when I take notes, I look at the positives of what they did. I just write a little plus and say, oh, that's a good example of this. That's a good example of this. And then I also write down deltas. I don't write down minuses. I write down deltas, things that I would change if I were giving the speech as well. And I collect all those, and then after the speaker's done, I try to find commonalities on those individual data points and group them together, and using those as examples when I say, I really liked your humor at this point, at this point, at this point. And I liked your gestures. Here's an example, here's another example. So you can use those things to back up your statement that what you liked or what you thought needed changes. And then there's a lot of information that you collect in that note-taking. When you deliver, you have to have the ratio of 3 positives at the very least to 1 suggestion. So what I call it 3 ups and 1 down. And I think it's very important that you have that ratio. Psychologists say for everything that is a suggestion or a slight critique, you need at least 3, ideally 4, positive reaffirmations of ourselves to build positive self-esteem. So you need, once again, to promote self-esteem in your evaluation. And this kind of formula is very important. But there's one other hitch to the 3 ups and 1 down, and that's the order in which they appear. So Dennis likes to talk about the sandwich method. Dennis, how does that work?
Well, it's not my method. It's actually in the Evaluate to Motivate handbook from Toastmasters. The idea being that when you deliver the evaluation, and this is the winning combination that I've always used in the contests, you want to give 2 or 3 things that they did particularly well, 1, maybe 2 things that would be areas for improvement, but the last thing you talk about is the thing they did very best in the speech. This way, greasing the wheels to get the evaluation started at first, you've got them listening to you and on your side, so that when you give them the feedback, they're ready to listen to the areas for improvement. And if that gives them a downer, by ending up with the very best thing they did, you're going to rebuild that self-esteem and make them anxious to come back and show you how they've improved the next time. Now, what's interesting for me, though, is that I actually use your method, Brendan, with the pluses and deltas. But when I sit down to prepare for an evaluation, I divide my paper into 6 quadrants. Saw, heard, and felt. I have pluses on the left and deltas on the right. And I make my notes into those boxes. Then after the speech is over, I look through and gather the pieces I'm going to use and put them in order.
Cool. And that's a great way of doing it. And once again, that method can't fail of what you saw, heard, and felt. One thing about taking all of this notes, you're going to have more information than you can share in 2 to 3 minutes as an evaluator. And it may be there's certain critiques that need to be shared with the speaker. That speaker really needs to know, and it's something that could really impact their self-esteem if you do it publicly. So after the meeting, you might go up to them and say, Dennis, I did really like that speech. I was genuine when I gave that evaluation, but I did not mention one thing. Next time, please make sure your pants are zipped up all the way.
Oh.
And that's important to share privately, as well as some other information that may help the person. But you do it one-on-one, and in that way, you're not embarrassing anybody in front of the group, and that would prevent that from hurting their self-esteem. All this information is out there, but please remember the delivery, doing it in a smile in your voice and a smile on your face for positive self-esteem. it's time for questions and answers. Dennis, any questions? Any answers?
I have neither, but I will post my email address, and if anyone has questions, we will certainly answer them.
And gladly we will do so and look forward to any discussion you want to share. Finally, I want to conclude with this quote from Ralph C. Smedley. Dennis, who was Ralph C. Smedley?
I believe that he was a cartoon elephant from the 1960s.
Yeah, okay, actually he's the guy who founded Toastmasters, started it in 1905 and made it official in 1924. We're 91 years old this very year of 2020 and very excited about how we're approaching our 100th year of helping people grow as communicators and leaders. And when you evaluate to motivate, whether it's in Toastmasters or outside. Take this amazing skill as an evaluator and be an effective leader. Remember that fault finding without suggestions for improvement is a waste of time. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Glad that you were able to join our Power Hour. Wish you happy Toastmaster. Back to you, Mr. Dawson.
I find no fault in what you have said.
Gladly, sir. Enjoy.